Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Today we will talk about different chibi poses. But before we start, I have to show you guys the basics of drawing a chibi person or a character. There are different sets and different rules for different styles of chibis, but the type of chibis I usually draw is made in a really easy way by making two squares on top of each other, and that way you know approximately how much of an area you should leave out for the character's head and the same amount of surface you need to have for the body and the rest of the little details on the body. So when you have these two squares approximately similar size, please don't be scared about not being able to do it perfectly without a ruler. It's completely fine. So as you can see, I don't use a ruler and I just wing it. I just try to make it similar looking. You guys will get a hang of it soon enough. So the first circle, well, the first area should be reserved for a circle. And to make a circle look as best as possible, the trick is just to scribble it out in circular motion until you're satisfied, and then later on just touch up the parts of the circle you like the best. So this circle here is actually our character's future head, and the rest of the body is divided in a tiny little pear shape and two stumps that should resemble legs and two more stumps resembling tiny arms. And this is the most simple chibi template you can do. If you divide the face into a cross shape, you have a good base for setting up the chibi's face. So you can make two circular shapes for the eyes and shape them any way you like. You can add some upper eyelashes, some lower eyelashes, some elongated pupils with some light bubbles inside, and black irises. And make sure to make it pop by adding some thicker lines. And you can do all of this by just pressing your pencil a bit. If you want to make it look more professionally looking, you can always use some form of ink pen or a fine liner and make all of these lines really black. We should also focus on the rest of the chibi, like their ears and their mouths. And before you even try thinking about the rest of the details on the chibi's face, remember chibis are usually quite more cute if you leave out the nose and just don't draw a nose at all. And just for an example, let's make this chibi into a fully formed character, adding her some cute hair, some bangs, maybe some cute cat ears on top of her head, and the volume on the hair is very important. And of course, if we want our character to have some additional details, those should be left for this part of the character. So try not to put too many details on the face itself, but go nuts with the details on the clothing. For example, you can do tiny sleeves, tiny frills, tiny decorations with buttons, and just go nuts with your character's clothing. If you're doing a fan art like a chibi of a certain character, you can use the details you see on the character and make them a bit bigger. For example, if the chibi character has a bow or several bows on their clothing, you should make those bows pop out by making them a bit bigger. And of course, if you want to add some more details on your characters, you can always make their hands more detailed by adding tiny little Pikachu fingers, I like to call them. And you can even add some tiny adorable feet containing tiny adorable shoes and socks. This is something that's quite fun to make, and I'll just emphasize some parts by using this black marker. You can use a thin marker or a fine liner or ink and a brush or a ink pen, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and then just emphasize the parts of the character you like the most. This process is called inking because you're adding black ink to your character and everything looks way better, way more visible. And another upside to inking a drawing is actually not being able to smudge the lines like you can do with just a pencil. If you just use your palm and go over your line art by mistake, you're actually risking smudging half of your drawing because it's done in pure pencil. So if you want to keep your drawing smooth and looking good, you should definitely ink it. That way you preserve all of your hard work and make it look even more impressive and professional looking. Don't forget the tiny details like little bangs and even sideburns. Yes, even female characters have tiny sideburns. So all the tiniest details on the character should be left around the face, but not on the face itself. And yeah, you can add a lot of cute frills for female characters. You can add fluffy dresses, little bows. For male characters, you can add tiny hats or weapons. And just go nuts with the clothing details. Just make them super tiny. It's going to look adorable. I even had a bet with a friend once. He was drawing this most horrible looking monster, and I had the task of making it look cute. And by turning the character into just a couple of simple lines and circles and curvy shapes, you're able to make any character into a cute character. Trust me, it's very easy when you realize that cute characters are actually just circles and simple shapes. And the reason why I'm using this to explain all of this is to show you how this character I just drew for you, we can even give her a name because I really love cat characters. Well, she does actually remind me of that League of Legends character with the bear. So please, no copyright infringement. She's just a generic chibi cat girl. Anyways, so as you can see, the chibi characters I usually draw are consisted out of one size for the face, well, generally the head, and that same size applies to the entire body. So today we will be doing several different types of movement for the chibis. It's easy to draw out a chibi, but it kind of gets complicated when you try to make them into a pose. So how about we do 4 poses today? First pose will definitely be a sitting pose. After that, I want to try to explain a running pose to you guys. And then let's try one fighting pose. Oh, I forgot the H. Oh, silly me. And a carrying pose. Okay, so to make a sitting pose, we should definitely start off by drawing the head first. Then we need to leave out enough room for another head beneath the circle, and then shorten it a bit. If there are 2/3 of the head inside of the character's body, we just need to add 2 tiny legs, 2 tiny stumps right next to it. So this is where the body usually ends, but since it's a seated position, the character's legs are even shorter, and we can add a tiny chair. That is very important because we need our character to sit on something, right? Okay. So, and we can even add their small arms resting. As you can see, these characters don't have any knuckles or special details or elbows. They just look like tiny squiggly shapes like, I don't know, beans or macadamia nuts or something like that. You can envision them as in any way you like. So, when a character is sitting down, the most important part you need to know is to make their legs shorter and their tiny bellies. And their hands can rest. Their hands can be even in the air trying to wave at somebody passing by. And don't forget, the important thing about chibis is that this particular type of chibi does not have any neck or shoulders to them, so they can look even more like babies and just look more adorable. Okay, so that was the sitting pose. As for the running pose, what you guys need to remember is that you need something called contrapost. For any type of movement, a character, I'll take a note of it here, a character needs to have a contrapost to be able to move. If we have a regular body, in theory, that body is supposed to have shoulders here and hips here. When we tilt the shoulders and the hips separately, like we tilt the shoulders like this and we tilt the hips like this, the character's spine goes a bit to the side. This makes certain parts of the body move in different ways. For example, it makes this leg starting off here, making it during the standing of the character straight forward, but the other leg starts here at the lower position, and to have the same length it has to be a bit on the side. As for this, if we imagine these are the character's shoulders, we can put their hand on their hip and make this other hand lie next to the body. This is the contrapost. This is something that's making your character's pose and movement more dynamic, and it looks more natural. It doesn't matter that you don't actually draw your character's shoulders or elbows. The important thing is the logic behind it, and that you just need to remember this little trick. And of course, if you even make that trick to and apply it to the character's face, like so, you can get interesting expressions. You see, we're tilting their eyebrows and their mouth, so we can get a really nice flirty chibi. Hey there. Okay, so anyways, let's get back to other poses. So, to make a running pose, you need to start off by drawing a circle again, and then leaving out enough space for another circle, so the size of the circle, and another circle beneath this circle, and then just make it shorter a little bit because our legs for the character are getting shorter again. So the 2/3 of the head are being transferred down to form the character's body. And if we imagine the contrapost in here, this would mean that this leg here starts off higher. And just make another macadamia nut, nothing special. Then we start off the second leg a bit lower and still make it into a curvy shape. It's not that difficult. And then if we imagine the shoulders being tilted to this side, that means that this arm here is starting off lower. And this arm here starts off at a higher position. So we're literally making this chibi run. So if we even enrich the pose by adding some effects on the character and around the character, we can get a dynamic pose for a chibi. And we can add some huffing and sweating effects. We can make him look tired, sad, exhausted, and we can make him running and just throwing a lot of dust behind him. So this is the trick so this trick here is implemented right here. If you're not familiar with the term contrapost, in English-speaking countries, you can mostly hear the word, well, the term counterpose, which is basically the same thing. So counterpose or contrapost, whatever you like to call it, it's the trick to all of the moving poses when drawing, and it's also applicable to normal types of bodies. So taller chibis with maybe more than one head in their bodies, and the rest of the characters. You should always have this little trick on your mind when you make your character jump on a trampoline, or do some fighting, or do some special movements. Okay, so speaking of fighting, let's get to the fighting poses. For example, fighting with a sword. So the trick is to again draw out a character's head and leave out enough space for another head where their body will be. And now again we have the counterpost showing by doing their imagined hips and shoulders. And before we even start drawing the pose, we need to figure out where the character's arms will be headed. So if this character has a sword, this character actually has really tiny hands, and we need to figure out how far the character's hands can reach. So if we start a hand over the character's head and place this nut here, this is the place where the character's sword will start from, because we're literally limited by the length of our character's hands. It's very important not to plan out the sword to begin here or anywhere else where our character's hands can't reach. Okay, and now we can add a tip of the other arm, well, hand, and then we can form the sword around it. And it's okay if some of the items actually go over your character's face. It's quite okay. This is how you get the more natural looking pose. And we can even place this higher leg behind the character, making it look smaller, and then this other leg in front of him, making it look, well, making it longer, but making it look like it's in front of the character. And to make this pose even more effective, you definitely need to play with lines you place. You have to make maybe tiny feet if you want. You can make this character have a really angry expression and even show some angry teeth. And of course, the sword, the tiny fingers if you want, and the hilt of the sword. What's important is to always try to do some research on types of swords your character is wielding, because for an example, a Japanese katana, it has a really long hilt. It's a two-handed sword, and the hilt for that would be twice as long than for a regular Western sword. So these little details will definitely make your drawing look more professional if you do some background checks. And the last type of chibi poses is the carrying poses. Usually when our characters are carrying something, they can carry it over their heads or in front of them, and that can be tricky when your characters have tiny stubbly arms. So let's try two different types of carrying poses. One will be with a character carrying something in front of them, and one will be of a character carrying something above them. The last one will definitely be the most complicated one, because our character's hands are actually not long enough. They're just this long and not long enough to reach even the half of their heads, let alone above their heads. So we'll have to use some tricks to make this look more realistic. Okay, so making a circle, making enough space beneath the circle for the entire body. 2/3 of the circle's length are reserved for the body. We don't have to really pay attention to the legs this time, and we need to see how far our character's arms can reach in front of them. So they're just so tiny, and they're like half of the length of the face. And so when you put those two little arms in front of the character, this is where you can start placing the object the character is carrying. And that object can be like a plate of sandwiches, for example. And pretty much the plate itself elongates your character, and it makes it look like the character's arms are a bit longer, but the truth is they are still the same length. But it's a neat trick because it makes your character look like it's doing something important, and nobody even notices if their arms are stubbly, but the character still looks adorable. And if you're doing a character that's turned sideways, you can always add this little shape, like a shape for their tiny little cheeks, carved out of the base, which is shaped like a circle. This makes your character more adorable. And since they are a serving type of character, they can have closed smiling eyes and smiling lips, which is really simple because you have a half circle, forming the eyebrows, fat half circles for forming the closed eyes, and a really tiny half circle, it's more like a U shape, for the smiling mouth. Okay, and last but not least, the tricky pose of carrying something above your head. Well, usually these types of poses are either over exaggerated, or a character's hair or accessories are used to hide the fact that the character is not really able to reach something on their heads. So you can literally just make their entire arms go next to their faces, up in the air, make them look like they're struggling with it, and then place the object on top of their heads. And basically, since their arms are so tiny, usually when you do hair and just cover the ends of the arms, you can get some sort of a optical illusion that this character is actually carrying something on his head or her head. This is usually something that animators really don't use because they can't really successfully show that the character is carrying something on their head, but it's a convenient little trick. And the best way to even camouflage this even better is by adding special facial emotions like struggling, shaking. You can use shaky lines, and just make the people who are looking at your drawing focus more on your facial expressions for your character than on the basic of the fact that your character can't actually reach that object. Well, and of course, if you like, you can dress up your characters, add tiny ears and little different types of hairstyles on them and clothing, and just more effects you add, the better your character will look, the more efficient their design will be, just making them look more as a fully made character from a story. And when you're doing some dynamic pose like running or fighting, another trick is to make something from their clothing to fly around. For example, if this was a knight running towards us with his sword, we would definitely want him to have a flowing cape Or maybe if he has a utility belt, he can have a pouch filled with gold also, like just flying around on the wind. And if he has some sort of a longer hair, he can definitely look like all of that hair is floating in the wind, like ponytail or something, just floating around, being fabulous. And there we go. And since all of these chibis have faces, I can't really resist it, and I really have to make them all look like they have some sort of a personality. So yeah, this one can be like really sleepy, have like tears in his eyes, and like smiling but waving at the same time, like hi, good morning, can I have a coffee? And yeah, we can make him into a funny character with like a bushy hair, still hasn't like combed it, he just wants his coffee. Poor guy, I know his struggles. And of course some raggedy PJs with like hearts all over them. So yeah, chibis are very fun to draw, especially if you ink them, they're even more effective. You can ink them with any type of a thin marker or whatever, and you get these awesome dark lines. And the more details you put on them, the better. If you want to learn more about drawing chibis and general manga illustrations, you can check out my book Manga Crash course, available on Amazon.com and your local bookstores in English and French languages. And you can learn all about chibi poses, how to create your own characters, etc. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys next time.